Welcome to Matching Mom Genes, where identical twins explore divergent paths of motherhood born from the same roots. Join us as we navigate this crazy world of parenting, proving that with even with identical DNA, our journeys are still unique. Get ready for laughs, insights, and a double dose of maternal mayhem. Except that's completely inaccurate because Shelby is not on the podcast. She is actually at a pumpkin patch. Can you believe it?
I wish it was pumpkin patch
So
here.
So anybody who is listening, please welcome my best friend of 22 years. Does that sound
a long
right?
time.
31 minus 9. A very long time. Yeah, we were literally just talking about the fact that you have a 6-year-old and I have a 7-year-old, and we met when we were 8. This is a very bizarre comparison. I was
Full circle.
I was looking at pictures from Big Brother's school. Like, they always send pictures at the end of the week of like a little update of what they did, which, by golly, I love their teacher. I would not have the energy to do that at the end of the week. I'd be like, goodbye, children, see you in a couple days. But she types up a cute little, here's what we did and here's what next week looks like, and little reminders, and then she sends a couple of pictures that she took throughout the week. And you can tell that he's always with his best friend. and I'm always like, look, best friend, because I'm so excited for him to have a best friend, because it's special when you're that age. Like, you love everybody, and a lot of times everyone in your class is all like countermingling as friends, but there's just something nice, and I just love that he's kind of got this boy he's standing at every photo with, and he talks about him, and he I love the best friend vibes. So, but today you are also sharing kind of a heavy topic. I don't know. Do you feel like it's heavy to talk about?
For me, it just brings a lot of joy because it was such a good experience and I love sharing it. But there's parts of it that can be heavy for sure.
Yeah. I'm glad that it brings joy to talk about it, because I do know that it can be a really painful conversation, but you're right. I think on the other side of it is a lot of joy. And what we're talking about is your experience with not one, but 2 adoptions.
Yes.
You've adopted 2 babies. One is 6 and one is going to be 1 in November.
Yes.
Yeah, your daughter's going to be 1 and your son is 6. So I don't even know how to start. Well, how did this happen? How did you end up in the wonderful world of adoption?
Well, my husband and I, we got married really young.
Yeah, you've been married for over a decade,
years.
Right?
Yes. So
that's too long.
So
that's too long.
We do still like each other though. So
that's wonderful to hear. I think your husband's hilarious. I've known him for all 13 of those years.
Yeah, he's a great
actually
guy.
Longer. Yeah.
And so we were high school sweethearts, and we got married the month after I graduated from high school.
Accurate.
And so we were married for right around 3 to 4 years, and decided, okay, we're where we feel stable and we want to try to expand our family. So we jumped off that big scary cliff and started trying. And for a year, we gave it the good old fashioned go, and nothing happened. So we thought, we ought to just kind of start with the health checks and just make sure there's nothing going on that's going to keep this from happening.
Yeah.
And both of us had, always been healthy, and, there was nothing that we knew about that should be a holdup.
Yeah, because there's really not a lot of warning signs. Some people have like certain disorders that can make it more likely, but like I feel like everyone I talk to who has gone through some level of like fertility issue is like, it came out of nowhere, and it's like, yeah, because you don't like, it's not like a cold. It doesn't have a lot of symptoms.
So we started just at my regular women's yearly check. I had told my OBGYN that we had been trying for a year and nothing, had happened. And we just kind of wanted to start with going through the checklist. So all of my well woman stuff had always come back, good, normal, nothing going on there.
Yeah.
So she said, why don't we just try doing some of the more common fertility drugs? And she said, I can prescribe that for you. Um, and you'll
Nice.
just,
Okay.
you'll get those from your pharmacy, you'll take them, and then you'll come in once a month at the right time, and we'll do a transvaginal ultrasound, which you get when you have to have more
To
than,
see if anything's
right,
sticking.
when you have to have more than one of those, you get real comfortable with being invaded.
Well, I was about to say, I at the beginning of my pregnancy, because it was so high risk, I had to have like
Yeah.
8 before he was big enough for them to see through my stomach. And when they moved, they told me the day like they pulled out the regular ultrasound, I was like, "Hello,
Yes.
friend." It's like, we
Yeah.
are done.
So, all that can be pretty awkward. And if you're a shy person, you got to prepare yourself for that and just get really okay with everybody knowing all your business. And
Yeah,
I
I
am a
imagine.
pretty shy person. But
Yeah. You've always been pretty
yeah,
reserved, but I feel like this experience kind of trained
yeah.
that out of
So,
you.
yes, definitely. Now it's like, oh, no big deal. You want to look at this? Here you go. You need to see this? Go right ahead. Um, so we did that. And we live in northern Arkansas. And so I was able to have all of that taken care of within like a couple hour drive, which was not too bad.
That's nice.
Because, some
Yeah, because
people,
you guys live, like, on an actual
yeah,
farm,
we're
so,
rural.
like, some people who live in a rural area, I mean, it's like you gotta
Yeah.
go somewhere really big, so it was nice that you were able to be kinda
Yes.
close to home.
So we did that. And what we tried was Clomid and Letrozole. And then I would go and I would have
Oh.
that ultrasound. They would make sure that there were not too many follicles and things going on, because if there's too many,
Fair.
then you might wind up with sextuplets. Um, and so
No,
they're
thank
like,
you.
please refrain from trying this month. You may get an army.
Yeah.
So
I love that they can tell you that. Like, if you've ever wanted 7 children at once, you can go ahead and try
yeah,
this, but, I'd vote for next
yes.
month.
And I also got really good at like reading the ultrasound machine. So like I could
Ooh.
tell exactly what was going on while they were over there typing it up, because they never tell you. They wait for your doctor to
No,
tell
they
you.
never say anything. It's the most I always like to trick them a little bit. Like, "Oh, look at that. I see what that
Yeah,
is." And they'll be like, "No, that's not what that is." And I'm like, "Well, then what is
yeah.
it?"
And I
Correct me.
I very much know what my uterus and all of those things look like. I have seen them
There
up
you
close
go.
and personal many times. Uh, so we would do that, and those medicines are pretty common. And I was on a low dose, but let me tell you, that is not for the faint of heart. Those medicines
Which
can make a person crazy.
which one made the rages? Like, didn't you have one that was like, you just wanna bean people over the head?
Yes,
Was that you or
no,
was
that
that
was
some I
me.
thought that was you.
And so it was the same medicines. It was Clomid and Letrozole. But after we had done that for, I think about a year with no results, my OBGYN referred us to a fertility institute that was like 3 hours from
Oh,
us. So it
okay.
still wasn't
The
terrible.
big guns,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so they did all the lab work. They checked all of Forrest's lab work. On paper, we're great. Like, we are
A
the
plus.
goal for people to be in their fertility life. And so
Great.
they told us that the next step would be trying what's called IUI. And basically,
Oh,
that's like
okay.
what they do with cows. And so,
I mean, you're right, but I just
yeah, it's like what they do with cows. So you take the same medicines, but at a higher dose. That
okay.
induced some pretty strong rages. I was hot all the time, like
Oh,
menopause,
just burning
hot
up from the
flashes,
inside.
hot. I slept,
Oh, no,
and
thank
you don't
you.
sleep either. And
Oh,
so that was
no.
awful. And I do not do good with sleep. I've always no sleep. I've always had to have a ton of sleep.
Yeah, you're a I'm at a sleepover, I'm still going to bed at 10
Yes,
PM
yes,
vibes. Like, that was that was both of us. We're like, we like sleep.
yes.
Emphasis on
Good
sleepovers.
night all. But no sleeping, hot all the time, and angry. I mean, like looking at
That sounds
people
like
and imagining they were burning up in front of you, kind of angry. So that's not
nice.
ideal. um,
No, it's not really where you want to be.
Poor Forrest had some rough months while we were going through that.
Oh.
But so with IUI, you take the medicine, you go, they do, the ultrasound, make sure everything checks out. And then it involved an overnight stay for us because you have to go back the next day
Okay.
at a very specific time that they tell you.
Oh, wow.
Yes, you cannot be late, you cannot be early. It must be the exact time. And so
Wow.
the day before that, they give you a shot in your stomach to kind of jumpstart ovulation. And then you go back the next day, and basically you lay on the bed like you're going to get your pap smear. And they have all of the contribution from your husband or significant other, and they put it in a big giant, like turkey baster, and they inject it right up in there. And you have to lay, yeah, you
Wow.
have to lay there for 20 minutes with your feet up in the stirrups so that you can properly marinate. And then yes,
Marinate.
that's what it feels like. And then they let you
I
go.
believe that.
And that day and night, you're supposed to also just have good old fashioned sex to up your chances. And then in 2 weeks,
Nice.
you can take a pregnancy test and see if it works. So a little more invasive, but still not nearly
Yeah.
as invasive as, say, IVF. And that's like a
Okay.
whole
All
nother
right.
level. Uh,
Yeah. I had a friend who went to New York for
yes,
IVF because of the level of like prestige that was
yes.
needed. And I'm like, that's a lot.
There is
I don't want to go up
so
there.
much that goes with IVF. And so we did, I think it was 3 rounds of IUI. And, you've got
Wow.
all of the health stuff going on with being angry all the time and hot. And then the
Valid.
stress of like, are my medicines going to get here on the right day? I have to be
Oh
here at this
yeah.
time. Like what if this happens over a holiday? You have to factor in all that stuff. And then
Oh yeah, because you're dealing with like body
yeah,
processes and like it's not I mean we all know it's not super
right.
regimented when things happen. So wow, I didn't even think about that
Yeah.
component.
And, I like to have everything planned out, know exactly what's going to happen like a year in advance. And that you cannot do that with this. So that added another level of stress. But
I was about to say you're my meal planning hero because you meal plan for an entire month in advance and like that's my goal. Like I get about 3 days. That's about as
well,
far as I
I
can
will
think.
say since the second child, I have backed that down to a week at a time.
Okay, that's
That's a
fair.
little more normal.
But this time last year, you
I
had a
did.
month at a time,
I
and I
did.
was like, "This is the coolest thing I've ever heard."
So all of that plus just the emotional stress. I mean, it is rough to be
Oh
so
yeah,
hopeful or not, or try not to be hopeful, because at the end that's where I
yeah,
was. I just could not handle that hill of hope and then just no every time. And
yeah,
so we're looking at like 2 years now of this, and that emotional roller coaster was just, it was tearing me up.
yeah.
And
That's
Forrest
painful.
was taking it better than I was. I mean, he was still very I mean, it was very hard for him, but he did handle it better than I did.
Well, and also, I mean, not to discount his role emotionally, but like you're also the one having things done to your body
Yes. Now
constantly.
he did have
Like,
some uncomfortable experiences because, you know,
I
part of
believe that.
IUI, you have,
Is you gotta get the rest of the
yeah,
stuff
you
for
do.
them. Um,
That can be kind of traumatic.
but yeah,
And
yeah,
he's
I'm
got
sure it'd be a lot
some
of pressure.
super hilarious stories from his side of the
Oh, I
ordeal.
bet, yeah. There's a little more comedy on
Hmm.
their side than the person who's marinating like
Yes.
chicken.
And I mean, we had tried it all. We'd like
So
stood on our head, all the things you
I
read
do
about.
remember the handstand days. I do remember the headstand days. In fact, every time my youngest is in gymnastics class and they all line up on the wall and do their headstands, I just have a brief moment of like, remember when
Yeah.
Kayla did those?
You should learn how to do this because you might in fact need this later on in your life.
Exactly. All you line up and do your headstands. This is an important skill. So is that how you knew it was time to kind of move towards
Yes,
adoption?
I could not do that anymore. And we both agreed that IVF was going to be too much. I mean, for one thing, the
Yeah.
cost, and all of this is expensive. I happened to have really good insurance at the time, and a lot of our IUI was paid for. I pretty much
See, that's
just had a
amazing.
copay, and then I paid for my medicines. But a lot of
Yeah.
people don't even have that. And
Exactly. I know. I mean, like, there's sometimes, well, I mean, like, I do have a friend, and like, she made the joke the other day that she's still paying off her 2 year
yes,
old, like her IVF baby. She's still paying him off, $250 at a
yes.
time or something like
And I
that.
mean,
And I'm like, that's very
an
real.
IVF round can cost as much as an domestic adoption. And
Oh,
so we
wow.
had decided that if, we just could not keep doing this, and if we were going to be plunking down all this money, then we wanted to pursue a route that would 100% result in us having a family one day, and
Yeah,
also
that's
be
fair.
able to help, this child that needs a home through no fault of their own, and uh, maybe meet someone else's need at the same time.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's a really good, and I know that's probably a lot of conversations and a lot of thinking and a lot of pro con lists and things like
Yes.
that. But I think that's a really good reason. It's like, hey, we want to do this. There's also probably a kid out there that needs this, so we're gonna
Yes.
do this.
But I will say,
I
if
like
you are considering adopting, you do need to address all of those issues beforehand. Your infertility, you need to come, to peace with that, and, you know, get all that taken care of, handled, and put away before you move into the realm of adoption, because you don't need to have that attitude of like, oh, I'm saving this kid. It's
Oh
not
yeah,
about
and
you.
that's yeah, and that's something I really love about your journey and your attitude with this is because there are a lot of people in the family justice world where I am surrounded. And there are people who will say, adoption is kind of fundamentally traumatic for
Hmm.
the child, even if it is as an infant, because you are separated from the person who you've been
Yes.
inside your entire life. And, there's a little trauma there. And there are people who have this kind of like toxic positivity of like, no, no, I'm
Hmm.
saving you. And it's like two things can be true. A child can need to live away from the mother who grew
Hmm.
them, and it can be traumatic to be away from that
Yes.
person. And so I think like two things can be very true, and then you get into kind of the complicated like children of different races and
Hmm.
ethnicities being raised in different homes, and like that's kind of it's a really important conversation to be having. But I do love talking to you about it because I really feel like you and Forrest both worked so hard to really understand that this was like you weren't rescuing
Yes.
your children. You were meeting a
Yes, and
need. And I love that
that is
perspective.
reflected a lot and I totally get where people are coming from when they say this. But the nice people who come up to you and say, "You are doing something so great," or "You are blessing these children," or "These children are so blessed to have you." And yes, I do try to be a blessing to my children every day, but they
Yeah. As a
are the
mom.
blessing to me. And I am
Yeah.
not doing anything special by giving them what they deserve, a loving home.
Yeah. Well, and I mean not to jump too far ahead, but like I believe that you and Forrest have both been able to kind of engage at least with your son's birth mom in a way that is helpful to her and him. Like I mean, you guys have worked really hard to foster that
Yes.
connection and really gain her trust and help her understand like we didn't take him away from you. You made a decision and gifted us
Yes.
this, and we are trying to make sure that you understand that. And I mean, I feel like you recently, and we won't get into her business, but like even you recently text me and you were like, "Hey, she trusted me with this piece of information that's so important," and that's a testament to how safe she feels, and I love that because that will matter in his connection with her as he's old enough to kind of understand, which I think matters a lot.
And one of the factors that led us to domestic adoption versus an adoption through the foster system was the fact that in the case of a foster situation, that's not gentle. There was a very violent
Mm,
separation of a bond that was there.
absolutely.
And uh,
Yeah.
through whatever decisions or actions led to that. It was not
Yeah.
planned or, thought out. And with particularly the agency that we chose to go through, and I know we're going to talk about that stuff too, uh, that was a choice made after a lot of education by the birth family. And
Yeah.
they have, I mean, that may have not been the outcome that they ideally wanted, but through whatever circumstances led this to feel this was the best choice they could make, they got to make that choice. It was not made for them.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about your agency, because I even got to work with them a little bit because I did some character references for you guys and things like that. And I was always super impressed by the people I interacted with. I mean, there's this really strong conversation of like, our goal is to keep families together and empower these mothers or these families to be able to keep their child. But if not, we're going to give them this other option. And like, I was always very impressed that it was never like, "Oh, we're going to get your friend a baby." It was like, we're going to work with these families, and if something happens and there's a baby that needs a home, we're grateful that your friend will be there. Like, I always like, even just from that side of things. And so how did you choose them?
Well, once we had made the decision to pursue adoption, and it took Forrest a little bit longer to get on board because he was worried, like, well, what if I just can't connect to them the same way I would a biological child? And we knew some
Yeah.
families who had adopted, and they had all been very willing to talk to us and share. And some of them had similar feelings as well. And they're like, that's not going to matter. It will not matter. You think it will now. I promise
Oh,
it will not. And it didn't.
yeah.
And in fact, Forrest frequently forgets when he's filling out medical forms that their genetic history and family health history is not the same as ours. And then I have to be the
Oh, I love
one,
that. He's just going
yeah,
in
and
and
then I have
putting
to be the one to
it
say, dear, it's not the same DNA.
in. They don't care. It's not gonna. That's so
Yeah, so
interesting.
that,
How did you? Oh, that's a question. Do you get some of their medical
yes,
history because of the agency? Oh,
yes.
that's
So
nice.
the
Okay,
great
that's
thing
nice.
about this agency, and I cannot say enough good things about them. They have just been so wonderful on all fronts. But we had contacted a local children's home and asked them, do you know any agencies that deal with domestic adoption? Because we knew international would be financially, that was going to be too much for us. Uh,
Yeah.
and we had told them, we would like to adopt an infant. We really want to be there for as much of the process of, as we can. And so,
Yeah, and I feel like that is, I mean, there's a reason in the court system. I don't know if you knew this, but like in the court system, they are more likely to terminate parental rights for younger children so that they can be adopted younger to make it slightly less traumatic and those years and years and years of trauma in the system. And I at first always thought that that was really cruel, but the more that the more that you learn, you kind of understand where they're coming from as far as like child
mhm,
centric. I don't love it for the parent side of
yeah.
things, but like, they are more likely, if you have like a 2-year-old and a 7-year-old, they're more likely to terminate parental rights on the 2-year-old and keep parental rights for the 7-year-old and work on reunification with them first than the 2-year-old. And I think it's because of that same thing you're describing with an infant of like, we want the bond to start as soon as possible so they feel safe as soon as
Mhm,
possible. And that's pretty valid from a mental health
yeah.
perspective.
So they had given us the name of this agency, Christian Homes and Family Services, and they are based out of Texas. They have offices sprinkled all over Texas. Uh, like Abilene is their main office, but they have a Tyler one, and they do some things in Fort Worth, and they also have a office in Oklahoma. I believe it's just one right
Okay.
now, but one in Oklahoma.
It's crazy to think that, because sometimes states are so different. Like in the family court system, like states are so
Yes,
different. They're almost like little countries with their court system. It's crazy to think that like you can go to a different state and plan to adopt in your
yes.
state. So I'm
Now,
excited to hear about that because that always blew my
if
mind.
you do that, you will have to follow the protocol for both your home state and the state that the adoption is taking place.
Oh, great. A Venn diagram of
So
rules.
that just means double the rules. But the good
Great.
thing about Texas is that they are one of the most stringent with their vetting of the adoptive families. So if you're good by
Ooh, I love
Texas
that.
standards, you're going to be good by everybody else. Um,
That's fair. I like
yeah, so
that.
there wasn't a lot of extra, we didn't have to do anything extra for Arkansas because all of that had
Got
been
it.
met by Texas. And they deal
Cool.
primarily with infant adoption. They do foster. They have families. You have to live in the state of Texas, but they do have families that
Okay.
foster. Uh,
So it wasn't really an option for
right,
you
since
guys,
we
of
were out of
course.
state. Uh, and they offer a orientation that they anybody who's really considering adopting through their agency, they require that you attend that. It's a 2-day orientation that takes place in Abilene, and they answer any question you could ever come up with. You meet all of the
Wow.
staff. They walk through all of the paperwork with you and explain it so that when you get to it, you already kind
Nice.
of know what's going on. They give you a wonderful little flash drive that has all the forms on it so you can take it home and
Love
do
that.
them. And they explained everything about like the process for us, the process for the birth families, the timeline of things. Uh, they talked to us about different ways to fund. They talked to us about their fees, and they upfront explained where every portion of what we were paying, what that would go to. Um,
Nice.
and they do a lot of fundraising themselves, so you're not paying their bills, you're paying for the
Nice.
legal paperwork that has to be done, all of those court costs, and then their marketing of you, because they do very heavily market and get.
Oh, I know you were like on a
I was.
website like a
I was.
celebrity.
And they rotate you each week,
Pick
so
me.
every so often you're the first one. uh,
Nice.
and they go into all of the different businesses in Texas that deal with birth families and just get their information out, get your information out. Uh, so they're pretty
Nice. I like
extensive.
that they do interagency. That's
Yes,
pretty cool.
and they also back their birth families and support them to the extent that I mean, we were just blown away, and that was very important to us. That any potential children we had, their birth family needed to be taken care of and supported too. Um,
Yeah.
so if you are expecting and you decide to make an adoption plan and you place with Christian Homes, before you even get to the point of saying, I want an adoption plan for my baby, you go through a lot of counseling, and they walk
That's
you
good.
through, what is this going to look like? What are you going to possibly feel? What kind of things are going to be involved? And once a birth family has gone through that, if they decide that they want to parent, then Christian Homes will support them as much as they can to help them successfully
Cool.
parent. If they choose to proceed with an adoption plan, then, I mean, if you need housing, they will house you for free. If you need help getting your groceries, they will take you grocery shopping. They will take you to all your doctor's appointments. They'll set them up for you. They will get you signed up on
That's
Medicaid.
amazing.
Um, if you need help, speaking to your family about your plan, they will help you tell your family, this is
Ooh,
what
I
I want
like
to
that.
do. Um, they get all of the health information that they possibly can from anybody that's involved. So we were able to have a fairly complete health history for both of our children's birth mothers. We have some extended maternal information. Uh, the birth
Nice.
fathers in our son's case, he was not known, so we have nothing for him. And then in our daughter's case, he was known, but he was not in the picture. So we have just like
So it
some
was hard to get
basic
information.
things that our daughter's birth mother knew, but not anything extended.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that's probably pretty common with single mothers,
Yes.
I imagine. Like that it's kind of hard. You don't sit down on dates and talk about extended
Yeah.
medical history. That's something that comes up later and later.
And and then
But that's awesome.
after
Go
after
ahead.
placement, they are also there for those birth mothers. They will check in on them. If the birth mother would like to have ongoing counseling, because I mean, that's a lifetime
Oh, so you mean after
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 placement.
the baby's
Yes,
born?
because
Wow.
there is a lot that goes into that, and that's a lifetime journey for those birth families of processing
Yeah, I
this.
imagine it
And so,
is.
if they would like to continue with counseling, that's offered to them, and they can go
And
through
now,
that.
correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, you guys even had a an almost placement, and at the very end either like family members wanted to keep the baby or even the birth mother herself. I don't remember the
Yes.
details, but like they have opportunities to just like no, like I've seen my baby, I've
Hmm.
held it in the hospital. I'm going to figure out a way to make this work. I have this agency behind me that's going to help me make this work. Like even if you guys are connected, as sad as it is for the adoptive family, like they can change their
Yes.
mind
In
legally.
Texas, a birth parent cannot sign any paperwork to relinquish rights until they have been medicine free from the birth for 48 hours.
Oh, I
Yes.
like that. I mean, I imagine that it's really hard if you're very
It's
set on
nerve
it and you're
wracking.
like,
Yes.
this is emotional for me. Yeah.
um,
Yeah. I could see where that would be hard, like holding a baby and being like, someone might take you
yes.
back.
Yes.
But I can see where that's such a good thing for
Yes.
them.
And with Christian homes, if something does happen and a placement is disrupted, they do not keep your match placement fee. So there's different fees,
Oh,
all
that's
throughout the
nice.
process. But the
Oh, yeah. I was going
biggest
to
the
ask you about those,
biggest
anyways.
fee is the match and placement fee. And
Got it.
unfortunately, not all agencies do that. And we personally know a couple different families who have gone through that process. And
I'm sorry. Did you just hear
I
that
did.
door? I just heard my youngest and his daddy go check the mail and somebody slammed the door.
Enthusiastic mail
They're having
checkers.
a They're having a good old time checking the mail.
uh,
I'm sorry.
but some agencies don't reimburse you that, and then you're out all this money. And we know several families that
Wow.
happened to multiple times. I mean, we're talking about
Yeah.
thousands upon thousands of dollars that are just gone.
And on top of the like on top of just the pain of like we
Yes.
had a placement, we've gotten attached to this idea. Maybe if you don't even know much about the child, like there's still that hope and then
Yes.
just straight up. I always think of I don't know if it's a quote or if it's a Bible verse, but it's like the hope deferred makes the heart sick.
Hmm.
And like there is nothing more painful than hope that has been taken
Yes.
away. And so I can't even imagine that plus the money of like, well, now we might not even get to do this again or have a child at all because we're out of
Yes.
money. Like that's so
And
painful.
so that had been a big piece of advice we had gotten. Make sure your agency will reimburse those fees. And Christian Homes does that. If it falls through, then the match placement fee is either returned to you, or if you want them to hold it until the next match, they can do that. And we did
Wow,
have,
okay.
with our daughter, we did have a match 2 months before she came to us, and it
Yeah.
ended up being a very quick thing, which it was still hard, but I was so thankful.
It was like less than
Yes,
24
and I
hours. Like you
was
text me and you were like, "Hey, we're deciding on this." And then you were like, "Oh, baby is
yes,
gone." It was
it
so
was
sad.
hard, but I'm so glad that it happened the way that it did, because it would have been so much worse if we had already told our son. Um, we had
Oh
not.
yeah. Oh, I can't even
This was a
imagine.
situation where we got called on a Wednesday night. Baby was going to come on Sunday. It was a planned thing. And the birth family did want to meet us prior, if possible. So we were going to leave Thursday morning to go to Texas
Yeah.
and be able to meet them and then stay until Sunday. And they had told us, this is another great thing about Christian homes. They will tell you up front when they call to tell you a birth mother has chosen you and go through all of the genetic information and everything you would need to know to decide. They will
Yeah.
tell you whether or not they think it is a high risk match, meaning the birth parent is wanting to parent, the higher chance of, okay, they may
Yeah, they're
decide
having a
to
hard
do this,
time.
or there's a chance, but this family is very committed to their adoption plan. And they had
Yeah.
told us up front that this particular birth mother wanted to parent so bad, and it was
Oh, that's
purely a
heartbreaking.
situation of lack of support that was leading
Oh,
her to choose adoption. So we knew that, parenting was heavy on her mind. And she decided that evening that she could not go through with it. Um,
yeah.
and she was worried about us. And we had told the caseworker, tell her not to worry about us because we will
Yeah,
be okay.
no.
Um,
Gosh, that's gotta be so
yes.
gut-wrenching for her because she's like, "Hey, I found it," like, because I mean, they look at, like, your
Oh, yes, and
profile
they
too,
see
so,
a
like, she
letter.
knew who you were and chose
Yes, they
you,
see
and
pictures, they see
then
a letter from you to them.
oh, wow. So, yeah, I mean, there has to be just pain on both sides in that
Eh,
situation, but I'm glad that she got the support that she wanted because I remember talking to you about that,
yes,
and they were gonna be able to help her basically
yes,
retain or at least a family member
yes.
retain so
So
she could
that
stay in
that
contact.
ended
That's
well for
really
them,
amazing.
which was great.